Hi, welcome back to another episode of We Be Life and Pod, the podcast where we talk about the highs and lows about life and the what even is my life. I'm Sabina Richards, and today we're talking about why does the office sometimes feel like it's high school? Like with the cliques, with the hallway chatter, when you're in the cafeteria and you had different groups at different tables. You had the popular kids, you had the nerds, you had the those on the short bus. I'm trying to find the most appropriate way to say this because back in the day, we said you were on the short yellow bus. You know, sorry if I offend anybody, but that's just what I'm thinking about when I think about school. And not just high school. I really was putting this topic together, and I just thought about school, and it took me back to grad school because that's my most recent school. I haven't been to high school. I left high school so many years ago. I think 2020. Well, I already told my age in the very first. I think I told my age, so I don't care about what time I graduated high school. But anyway, the office culture does, and it can feel like we're back in school, whether it's high school, junior high, grad school, whatever the case it is. So let's get into it. So one of the first things that I started to think about with this topic, of course, like I said, it took me back. But I started thinking about the parallels between office culture and school. So I definitely wrote some stuff down. And when I thought about it, I compared a lot of the experience to group cultures and dealing with group projects, because in school I hated group projects. Like, who really loves group projects? Do you really? I mean, I don't think so. Because we have so many characteristics of peoples in different groups, but not just the characteristics of those individuals in different groups. There are cliques that were in school that's still in the workplace. And I think that a lot of individuals who may have had whatever experiences in school transfer that into the workplace. So if you were the popular kid or the cool kid or a nerd, for lack of a better term, and I don't want to offend anyone because nerds are cool. I was a nerd. I think I still am a nerd. I'm the nerd. So I embrace that term. So it's not a bad term, and that's okay. It's good to be smart. Be smart, funny, sexy, all that, handsome, all of that. Embrace it. Okay? I lost my train of thought. What we're talking about? Yes, we're talking about the different groups that exist in school. So we know we have the cool kids. We had the athletes. We had those. We had the overachievers. Who else did we have? We had the gossip crew. Definitely the rumor mill. That group exists everywhere. We definitely have them in the workplace, but we also need to be very careful when we're engaging in those individuals, because number one, you don't always know who they are, but you kind of do, right? It's kind of like an unspoken, who, because based on the information they're giving you, how do you know that? You got to have access to certain things. And then they might get away with the gossip for a little while, but let you be the one that gets involved in it. All of a sudden, you're the one in trouble. And they say in the Caribbean, mouth open, Tory jump out, right? So be very mindful when we're engaging in conversations with that gossip group. Because one of the things that I was always told growing up is show me your friends and I'll show you who you are. And some of the same things apply in the workplace, okay? So let's talk about the characteristics of individuals that we encounter in the workplace. And again, I compared this to when I was in school doing group projects, because there's always one of these people, one of these characteristics in the workplace. So let's go through the list. We have the worker bee. This is the person who does it all. This is the person who, we have a project, they'll get the research started, they'll put the list of individuals who would be great teammates, etc., etc. Then we have the slacker. We got one everywhere. In school, in real life, they exist. They just show up. They're just there for the ride. They get a benefit. They do the bare minimum. Sometimes they don't even do anything, but they get to pass because of the work of the group. So their name is on it. They ain't do nothing. Here's a copy of the final paper. Oh, here's the final results of the project. Thanks. Right? So we have the slacker. We have the organizer or the admin who makes sure, again, that we have a clear direction. And this could also be the worker bee. The worker bee could be the admin. They can be the organizer. They can be the writer, the person who's taking the notes. They can be the analyst, the one who has reviewed the data or reviewed the information. They can be the one who's doing the brainstorming. You have all of these different individuals, but sometimes one person can encompass these characteristics as well. Then we also have the procrastinator. You give them a task and they wait until the very last minute to do the task. They'll do it really well, but it'll come at the very last minute. Then we have the analyst. So I call this individual, you could be the analyst if you want to put a positive spin on it. So this is someone who in an organization or a part of a team, their responsibility is to identify the risks and how to solve them and what are solutions. So you can look at it that way. I call them the fault finder because usually this is the individual who's in the group, very rarely has any type of input or commentary, but waits until everyone else has brought in their point of view, their research, their documents, and then, well, I reviewed it, and Jane, I have an issue with this because here's what I figured out, etc., etc. John, maybe we need to change this to that. Mind you, throughout the entire process, they haven't contributed much. If anything, they had no recommendations, nothing, but they wait until everyone else gives an answer or everyone else gives a response or everyone else is courageous enough. Because even when you're in a group project or you're in a project at work, individuals, at least for me, so I'm not going to call anyone out, there's still a hesitancy to voice your concern or voice your opinion or recommendation or whatever the case may be, because let's say if you're the very first person to say something, you could be viewed as someone who, is going to have something to say. But we're in a group. We all should have something to say. But we also know that that's not how it works in group settings, because many times it's majority rules, right? And then we always have someone who is just confused. They don't know what day it is. They don't know what project we're on. They don't know what topic we're talking about for the day. They don't know what chapter. They didn't review the outline. They didn't review the agenda. Like, there's always someone who's just so confused. I'm just happy to be here. They always going to send you a text message or want to talk to you after the meeting. Okay, can you send me your notes? Can you send me the minutes? Where are we? Did we talk about this? Did we review anything from last week? Like, where have you been, bro? Are you a part of the team, or are you just waiting to get a part of a percentage increase because of the outcome of this project? Right? So when I thought about this topic, I immediately thought about, oh my goodness, group projects. I hate those. But they are necessary. They are necessary when we're in school, and they are necessary when we are working, because it helps to build the team, the camaraderie, and also working with others. That's very important. You can be great working as an individual, but you also need to be able to be great or good working in a team setting. And that's challenging for a lot of people, including myself. But as I've been working, and not only just that, I know that in my position, it's required, period. As you're going up the ladder, working with groups of people is a requirement, right? So the challenge is you're working with different personalities, and you may not have a lot of time to get to know that individual personally. So you kind of have to fast track it, right? So one of the things that I always do is try to find out, okay, what are we looking to accomplish, right? And then tap into your skills and your abilities and how you can contribute to the team, right? So that's one of the key takeaways from doing this putting this topic together. Again, I immediately thought about grad school. I think, what was it? I think my last semester or my last 2 semesters, we only had group projects. I'm thankful because I had, 2 of my friends, we were in a group together for the majority of the semesters, but it taught me a lot. It really taught me the dynamics of working with others. It truly did, because it's not about you anymore. Your lack of input, or increase in input, I should say, it doesn't just impact you, it impacts the entire team. And one thing about school is, if we had a team member who was not pulling their weight and it was just to the point where it was just so egregious, we could have went to the professor and requested for that individual to be removed from the group. Now it means extra work on us. And you can do something similar in the workplace, but remember, there's a workplace culture, and be very careful when you make those types of decisions, because depending on who that individual is, it can come back and bite you. And I'm not saying not to stand up and defend yourself, but I'm telling you that learn your work culture and learn what works in that space and how to approach specific situations. Every culture, every workplace has a rule. Every workplace has one. Learn and figure out what yours is so that you can be successful in that arena. Okay? So we have types of coworkers. Talked about the hallway. I mentioned the gossip group. So be very careful with this group. This is a group of people or an individual, and again, we know who they are. Based on the information that's being put out in the rumor mill, we can do process of elimination, because only certain groups of people have access to certain information, right? So where'd you hear that from? Your title, your position, how do you know what's happening over there? That ain't got nothing to do with you. So that means someone who has access to the information is doing what they're not supposed to do. So be very careful. This individual will know who's coming, who's going, who's angry, who's in a relationship, who's not, who's getting promoted, what they're getting promoted, who's retiring, who is retiring, for lack of a better term. It's either you retire or we make you retire. This person can know everything, and they are well enough to not get caught. But again, remember, just because they may not have been identified, it's not a secret who it could be or who that individual is. So if you are engaging with that individual, be mindful of your interaction with them, because we can be guilty by association. And when, I think there's a saying that my boss always says, and I may be getting it wrong: never back someone in a corner, because they're going to do everything to get out. And that means that person can take you down. Okay? Again, what does it remind you of? High school. Okay? So we have the gossipers. We have the teacher's pet. We have that person who gets what they want. Their department is always considered for whatever the case may be. They always get to, for example, I used to work, I'm laughing because it's internal. I can't share too many details, but I can share enough. I used to work, one of my previous employers, we used to have a running joke that, some departments would do desperate hires because that budget was going to be snatched. So they would just go ahead and hire whomever, even if it may not have been a great candidate. Right? But then there were other departments who had the opportunity to have their budget be available to them for an exceptional amount of time, even past certain deadlines. And even other departments' budgets were put in to help certain departments, right? Because in organizations, you have areas that are generating the income for the organization. So your cash cow, for lack of a better term, that's where all that resource is going to go in every organization. It's just what it is. Human resources, again, I've mentioned I work in human resources. We don't really generate any revenue, right? So we don't really get a lot of cash going into. And you can ask anyone who works in any human resource department, okay? But in every organization, whether it's not-for-profit, for-profit, the area or that department that is bringing in that money will always get priorities and things. So be very mindful. If that individual you're sticking to, that might be the teacher's pet because they're overseeing the department that's getting the funds, that's bringing in the money and keeping the business going. Okay? Again, we already talked about the slacker. They're somehow surviving. A lot of times they might be surviving on who they know. That saves them, that keeps them there. Again, in every organization I've worked with, there's always been someone there that falls into that category. They are everywhere. The characteristics and the categories that I'm talking about exist everywhere. I have been, and I'm not even counting my retail experience, but I've been in corporate America for over 18 years. I did a count. I went back and I did a count because I'm like, wait, it's been 20 years. No, I'm 2 years shy. 18 years I've been in corporate America. So I've seen this across the board, across different areas. Okay. Then we have the mean girl squad, or the jocks, or the popular kids. This is the person that everyone likes, right? So they get everything they want. They know everyone. They keep key with everyone. And just by whispers, they can blacklist someone. Passive aggressive communication, passive aggressive emails, bullying, intimidation. And it doesn't have to be in overt forms. It doesn't have to be overt. Okay? It's very subtle. It can happen over time when you don't realize it's happening. Okay? These are the different types of characteristics of groups that exist in the workplace. So we just took high school and moved it from one cafeteria to another one where we get paid. Okay? Then the class clown. Yes. Not in corporate. Sometime in corporate. So the class clown is someone that I categorize as someone who just cannot read the room. They cannot read the room. They're constantly making jokes. Sometimes it may be inappropriate. Definitely when I worked in the retail sector, definitely saw a lot of those. Just did not know how to read the room. Always decided, I guess that could be the way they dealt with things, to laugh things off. But that's not beneficial. Don't be that person in the workplace. Yes, you may joke and you may laugh at some things, but don't be the class clown. Don't be the person who you think that everyone loves, but they're really laughing at you when you leave the room. Don't be that person. Okay? They exist. Just don't let it be you. So how do we deal with office high school, right? I've mentioned it before when we talked about the gossip group. Don't get pulled into the rumor mill. You know, I think I've talked about gossiping about 3 times. It's serious. It's very serious because it can go into something funny. It can start off as something harmless. But it can easily catapult into something that could become slander, into something that could be considered bullying, into something that could be harassment. It just like that, it can snowball. So be very careful if you have an inkling from interactions with individuals or groups of people. If they're part of that gossipy rumor mill crew, be very careful. Okay? We are truly identified by our association in the workplace. Okay? Set boundaries. We need to set boundaries. Absolutely. Last episode, we talked a lot about setting boundaries, especially in the workplace. So one of the things that is happening more and more. Actually, it's not that it's happening more and more. I just haven't been out lately too much after work. So I would always, I mentioned in one of the episodes, I would always go out after work. I was very social, right? And after work events, set boundaries. It's okay if you don't want to go out after work. And it's okay if you do want to socialize after work. It's okay if you want to consume alcohol after work. And it's okay if you don't. I would strongly recommend, if you are going to consume alcohol at any work-related event, that you put yourself on a limit or none. Very, very serious, because you're at a work event, right? There's an expectation of you. Even though it was one night of fun, that one night of fun can again quickly turn into something that's not funny, and that can follow you into the workplace the next day or the following week. Let's say you did something when you were completely intoxicated with liquor that was inappropriate. And in that moment, people may have been laughing because they may not know how to react, or to make sure they don't make you uncomfortable. But you could be going into HR the next morning because of your inappropriate behavior, because of the concern of your alcohol consumption at a work event. Okay? So again, set boundaries. Set boundaries in your conversations at work. You don't need to divulge too much of your personal life to anyone in the workplace. That's your private life. Okay? Set boundaries. And I'm going to stress about this alcohol consumption thing. I have been to many after work events, and that is something that can really leave a negative scar on your character. If you drink alcohol at work events and you go above the limits and you don't have any form of self-control, trust me, that will impact you in the workplace. You may not think it does. Someone may not approach you directly, but they'll definitely be talking about, did you see how much this individual drank? Oh my goodness, they're at a workplace. Slow it down. Just because liquor is free or open bar. I've 18 years in corporate America, I'm telling you. Okay? I can't stress that enough. Set boundaries, have self-control. Find your people. I mentioned the groups that you want to steer clear of, right? And while we don't go to work to find friends, we luck out. We luck out and we find amazing people that we become best friends with, or we just find people who make the workplace more bearable, right? Find your people. If you feel comfortable sharing with them, then you may do so. I still say set boundaries until you've established the core of these people, right? But if you find your people, that's great. I've definitely been very lucky in finding great people to work with. I love that. And remember, your time at an employer is temporary. At any point in time, you can decide that you're ready to leave, or they can decide that they're ready for you to leave. So it is transactional. Remember that. Remember, the work world is small. It's not as big as you think, right? So you don't want to go out there burning bridges unnecessarily. I'm not talking about if you've been wronged. I'm not talking about if there are things that are owed to you. We're not talking about things like that. We're simply talking about making sure that while in the workplace, you maintain a characteristic that is highly spoken of, because you want to build networks. You want to create relationships. So if you leave that specific employer and you're moving on to the next thing, a lot of times deals are brokered at dinner tables, on the golf course, or at a bar. It's just a fact. At some private club where we're having butterscotch and whiskey neat. You want your name to be called for good reasons. You want your name to be called in rooms that you're not in for good reasons, right? So it's very important that although work can be the workplace, I should say, not just work. The workplace can definitely feel like high school sometimes, but it's very important how we use that environment to make sure we create a platform for ourselves as we move forward in our careers, whatever that is. Okay? So in work, we should be having growth. We should enjoy what we do. If we have the opportunity to do something that we love or like at a minimum, that those are the things that we should focus on at work. And the pay, let's not forget the pay, because we're not doing free labor. Okay, negotiate your salary. Negotiate for yourself. This wasn't on my list, but I'm going to say it. Negotiate for yourself at the workplace. You know what you bring to the table. Make sure you speak up. Okay? So this was not a long topic, but this was definitely something I wanted to speak on. There were a few things that just came to mind. So if this episode, spoke with you, if you felt that there was something that was meaningful to you, or if there are items that you think that I should talk on more with regard to the workplace and things of that nature, let me know. Comment, like, subscribe, and share. I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time, and bye for now.